Welcome back to Business Week here on Arise News. I'm joined now by Muktar Mohammed, CEO of Finance with Muktar, to review some of our top stories in more detail. Good morning, Muktar, and great to see you.
Thank you. Good morning, Rolake.
So, interesting, the Fed, Jerome Powell, has said that they are pausing their quantitative tightening. And of course, we saw that there was a 25 basis points rate decrease last time. What are they really signaling with what they're doing and that policy statement?
I think it's an era of cutting rates.
Okay.
You know, if you look at the UK, you look at the US, you see we've gotten those tightening for a very long time. And if you know, Donald Trump have always thought that the rates should be cut.
Yeah.
I think at the point the US are beginning to realize that they have to cut rate. Also, that has to do with their environment. Remember again, that environment is still not so friendly for consumers in terms of cost of goods. So you see what you're trying to fight with using the trade tariff war, trying to get it back so that smaller business will survive in the the US. I think that's what it's trying to do, the rate, so that more smaller business can borrow, especially those that have to do with agriculture, those that have to do with export, so that they can have cheaper product to be able to compete globally.
Yeah. So is the impetus here stimulating economic activity, or is the impetus here inflation control?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
You look at inflation control, cut rate. You look at stimulating activities, low interest rate for farmers to expand.
Right.
So it depends.
So do you think we're in a deflationary cycle?
We are. Globally.
You think so? Globally. Okay.
It's the red cut here in Nigeria, Ghana, Angola, everybody.
All right, great stuff. Google is investing $15 billion, its largest investment in AI outside the US, in India. What is India doing right, and why is it so significant?
Rolake is significant because remember the $100,000 the B2 visa issue.
Absolutely.
Google is now planning ahead because most of their expertise always comes from India. So they are now beginning to look, if we cannot pay $100,000 to bring them into the US,
then we'll go to them.
Go to them and they work from there. Basically, that is just what they are doing, trying to make sure that they don't fall back in terms of manpower, because they know that those services, if you want to get those manpower in the US, is very expensive. So they are beginning to plan ahead, in spite of they have concern over it, they're still discussing over it. It has not fully come into place, but they are preparing for it. I just think that's the real.
Okay, this is interesting because some people looking at this would also argue that this is also a strategic play supported by the US government because of US-China tensions, and India is a nice counterweight to that.
Will you agree with that? You remember Modi is also at war with Trump.
Who? Narendra Modi, yes.
Yeah, it's also
they've had some tariff tensions.
They have tariff tension. So I think it's Google just looking ahead, planning ahead, knowing that, look, we may come to that point, and our greatest resources always come from them. Don't forget, like you said again, India is one of the biggest markets in the world. So they are also looking at getting into that market, expanding in that market, and also using that market as a springboard to hit other parts of Asia countries.
Yeah. So this story that the IMF said Nigeria is not on the list of the fastest growing economies, should we really be bothered? Because if you're really focused on your own economic growth and trajectory, and we're seeing some positive signs in our macros now, why the unnecessary comparison with other countries?
Well, we shouldn't be bothered, but where we have the story is just because you're saying we tend to celebrate that we are now back out of the wood. We are looking at, we are the economy that is growing very fast. But when you look at those countries that were mentioned there compared to Nigeria, you begin to ask, we have a lot of work to do. You're talking about this country, you look at their growth, it's also largely driven by infrastructure. They are building the infrastructure, they are doing physical disciplining. If you look at what the IMF is saying, compared to Nigeria should have been there. But if you look at the IMF report, it's talking about our debt. Our debt is really, really high, budgetary, low oil price due to low OPEC output, even if it has improved. So all these things are the challenges that we are not among the fastest. The lesson there is that GDP growth alone cannot help your economy. If you look at that, those countries that I mentioned, they're looking at their smaller business infrastructure, how those have been able to structural reforms that are able to help grow those smaller business to expand into other spaces and create employment. That is why that economy is one of the fastest growing. The same reform we are doing there, you see that the same reform they are doing there. But added to their own is physical discipline in terms of budgetary planning, in terms of low cost, in terms of when you look at our old bogus political appointees, you look at that, you see financial discipline in the outside. That's just the difference. So why they are going fast, they seem to manage risks, you say, in financial sector, why we are still living our life if it was normal.
Okay, so well, let's look at another comparison. Nigeria's NGX 30, the listed and most capitalized stocks on the exchange, we're seeing a year-to-date performance of 41%, which is quite formidable. And of course, the comparison has been drawn between the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which has a year-to-date performance of 9%. So clearly, there's momentum in our equities markets. What is accounting for this momentum?
So let's just give it to the reform. The reform have really helped the market.
Okay, which ones specifically?
Floating of the currency have really helped the market. If there's any reform, economic reform that hit the ground running, I think the Tinubu administration is the one that hits the stock market. I think the stock markets have benefited. Initially, it was just the financial sector that were benefiting from the floating of the currency. Now we are we saw the manufacturing sector, the consumer sector suffering a lot of losses. But now what we're seeing is shifting. Those sectors seems to be making a lot of profit now because there's stability in the exchange rate. Then you look at the ICT companies, you look at MTN, Airtel Africa also, you begin to see that there's a synergy now in terms of you are beginning to see them come out of that losses and beginning to declare profits. And that is what reform is all about. Once the reform comes in, first of all, hit investors' confidence, high companies begin to make profit, immediate companies, then later on you see it goes to other aspect of the companies. And so that's what we're seeing in the NGS. Initially last year at this time, we saw those crazy losses from the manufacturing sector, especially the consumer goods sector. But today, we are seeing those profits coming first quarter, second quarter. We're waiting for the third quarter. But already, if you look at the company like PZ on the third quarter, it's already giving us a pointer of what to expect. So what we're seeing in the NGX is a reform-driven performance, which it would be sustained because if you look at our FX is still coming down gradually. So good.
Yeah, and I think the moderated rate environment could also have had an impact on those figures.
Well, that's the point. But again, that's in pricing. Fixed income space is already pricing that already.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you. We've run out of time, Muktar Mohammed. Great to chat with you as always. Thank you.